Alrighty, everybody, we are back with another episode of Bad at Magic, where we're bad at magic.
All right, I didn't realize we were doing an NPR intro, but here we go.
I'm sorry. That was bad. I'm still trying to figure out how to do this for us. So, EK and I were trying to figure out what we wanted to do for episode 2. Because there's like a lot of different things that you can talk about, especially when you're a budding podcast, and
Mhm.
we were kind of thinking about the ways that we experience magic and the ways that we play magic. We have very different play styles, we have very different experiences, and then we kind of realized the best place to start is literally at the beginning, and deck building is kind of the beginning when it comes to magic. And we kind of realized we don't deck build the same, like, at all.
It's like a complete polar opposite.
Yeah,
Even like it's bad.
it's
So
bad. It's not bad. It's just different.
it's yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it. Sure, that's just doubling down. Like deck building is just a very personal process. Like
Mhm.
that's fine that we do things differently. It's actually probably a good thing because if everyone just built their decks the exact same way, like I
It'd
feel
be
like the
boring.
format just wouldn't have the format wouldn't have the dimension that it
Mhm.
that it has. People's personalities wouldn't come out in their decks as much as they do.
For sure. Like, for me, I deck building, I'm glad you said deck building is a very personal thing for me, especially. It's a way for me to kind of express my creativity, which is why I like Commander so much. It's the format where there's no particular set meta. You can do anything about any number of ways. There's always like 5 or 6 ways to do one thing. And one might be super good and one might be like the most bass backwards way of doing it, but it's still fun, and I really like that. Um so when it comes to deck building, I just think it's kind of a really good place, I think, for us to start this kind of episode. Like, how do we like to deck build? Where do we start? What resources do we use? Is there any sort of like mantra or thing that you go through when you deck build? Or do you just, I mean, there's so many different ways that you can do it. Like, I even now, where I am now with my deck building process, I used to do it completely differently. When I first started playing, it'll be, oh god, 7 years in December. It'll be 7 years in December. Oh my god, that's a whole child's worth of of magic experience.
That is an entire experience of grade school and middle school
God,
worth of
nightmarish.
yeah. So naturally, you have your blunder years where like you're just flying by the seat of your pants for those first couple of years, doing your hard and fast, like 10 pieces of card draw, 10 pieces of ramp, like that kind of like hard and fast template. And then
Mhm.
you've obviously like evolved to the point where like every deck is different just because you know what you're doing. Like
Yeah. I when I first started deck building, I would literally just, because this was before I knew about EDHREC, so I would literally go on to Tapped Out. I would type in the commander that I wanted to make. I would sort by like views or likes or whatever. I would choose the highest appraised list that wasn't like over $1,000, and I would go, okay, this is it. I'm building this one.
are you a net decker, Chase?
I used to be, but that's just because I didn't really know the resources. But even then, it's not like a bad thing to be
No,
a net
it's
decker.
a
It's
it's a
not.
good thing.
It is.
It's great.
Those resources are made for you for a reason. They're put there for a reason. Like, I know that, especially in the past, a lot of people used to be heavily against the concept of net decking. Like, you're not exercising that creativity that you're supposed to be. So therefore, it's a bad thing, which I never understood, because literally every other format, especially tournament based formats, so like modern and pioneer and standard and stuff, those heavily rely on a meta with posted lists that are updated on MTG Goldfish, and that's how you find those lists are online. It just never made sense to me.
It's not a bad thing that there's net decking out there, and it's kind of whole. if people weren't encouraging each other to look at their lists, we wouldn't be putting our lists online in the first place. Like videos wouldn't have lists in the video description, like a recording on YouTube or something like that. You wouldn't be able to go to
Mhm.
Moxfield and look at the list there and either like get ideas for your own deck or just say like, hey, I like Rachel's Feldegrift deck. I want to build Rachel's Feldegrift deck. Or like,
Mhm.
I like your Chandra deck. If I'm going to build a Chandra deck, I want it to be that deck because I
Yeah.
like that deck as
Mhm.
much as I do.
I mean, as a content creator, I mean, like I like to make lists just because it's something that I personally enjoy, but I also like to make lists to provide that resource out there to people because it's not just for me. Like if you wanted that list, but you didn't really like have like the time to deck build or the energy to deck build because it's intense and tedious to deck
Yeah.
build at times because before my deck building stream that I would do, I would deck build over the course of like a couple weeks. Like I would really refine my list and take my time. And now I one shot it in like 3
Yeah.
hours. And
And like
that's
you
with the
don't
help of dozens of people too, by the way.
yeah, and like you don't necessarily follow like the same method every time you do that too.
No.
You know, it's obviously very like commander dependent, but even then you don't say like, okay, let's get the ramp out of the way. Okay, let's get the thing out of the way. Let's like work from a specific like method or two. You kind of just see how it goes and you're beholden to chat even as well, so it's kind of
Mhm.
whatever chat has come to their mind first and foremost as well.
When it comes to the concept of deck building, for me, I don't like the term staples, and that's something that has grown with me over time. Like when I deck build, I don't start with okay, we gotta have a soul ring, and we have to have if I'm in green, a Kodama's Reach and a Rampant Growth and Cultivate. Or if I'm in white, Path Swords, Beast Within, and Smothering Tithe. I don't build that way. I don't like building that way. I feel like that's rather limiting. I would rather trying to find ways to integrate quote unquote like staples in a way that fits with the deck. So
Yeah.
like if I have like in my Alibu deck, I have dispatch in there as opposed to swords to plowshares because dispatch originally is like a 1 mana white, tap target creature. If you have like 3 or more artifacts, it's exiled instead to that effect, I think off the top of my head. And so
Yeah.
like that fits more with the theme of the deck because it's an artifact deck, but it's not like, okay, you staple in. It just cuts out my creativity for me. So I really try to find ways to integrate flavor with the way that I'm brewing my deck, which is it's really difficult, especially when that's really ingrained in you, the concept of having these staples. Like it's something that you kind of have to learn and as you're starting, like, okay, I need to like run these good pieces when you're learning. And then when you're more knowledgeable about the format, you're like, okay, it's time to take away this knowledge and try and figure out substitutions, which I think is very funny.
Yeah, like I add staples in well, I'll say like I add quote unquote staples in like the middle of my deck building process. Like after I
Hmm.
figured out, okay, this is what this deck is trying to do,
Yeah.
I'll look at staples and say, okay, what like of this list of like 200 cards is going to help me do that thing better or
Yeah.
set me up to do the thing better. Rather than starting with them, I already have a game plan in my head, so I know, okay, if my whole strategy is built around like a 15 mana combo, I'm gonna need a bunch of ramps. So I'm gonna need my Kodama's Reach, my Cultivate, my 3 visits,
Yeah.
Nature's Lore, like all that kind of stuff. I don't do that first because I don't know what I'm using those to get to, essentially, is what it boils down to. I add my removal last because those are boring cards. They don't spark joy, as Marie
Yeah.
Kondo would say. And
Yeah.
like I very much operate heavily under the Marie Kondo school of deck building, which is if it doesn't spark joy, it's not going in the deck.
Hmm.
And if it's got to go in the deck, it's going in last.
Hmm. I I've adopted that a lot, especially like when deck building on stream too, or just even in general. I have to say, I I don't run cards, and this sounds really weird, but when I deck build, sometimes I feel things physically. I know how creepy that sounds, but like, if someone tells me like if I'm like doing a stream and someone tells me, oh, you should run like Force of Will, Counterspell, Dovin's Veto, Mana Drain, automatically I'm like, no.
I'm here to play Magic, and I want you to play Magic too.
It's just counter spells make me feel so icky, like, I get an icky feeling in my chest, and I know how it feels when I get a spell countered. It's a really big bummer, and it kinda makes me frustrated, and I just don't like doing that to other people knowing how it makes me feel. Now, guaranteed, there's some commanders who, like, you should absolutely, like, counter spells. So, like, Brawl is a good one for that kind of deck or
That is
whatever.
literally the counter spell commander.
Yeah, so, like, obviously, deck build at your own risk, choose what you wanna do, and no
Yeah.
shame if you like that, but when it comes to stuff like that, I really don't like to add them in or, like, pieces that even though I know are very good in the deck, there's just some pieces that I just don't like to run. Like, it took me a really long time to get behind Fire Covenant, um, it took me a really long time. I know life is a resource, but I don't like seeing that number go down, so it just
I thought you were gonna say Infect and Alibu because I know you
oh,
were
no.
apprehensive about that in the first place too.
Was I? I remember going ham when that was in there. I remember
Yeah.
somebody suggested it, I was like, "Yeah, we're doing that." Do I feel like the bad guy? Yes.
No.
Did I win in a super cool, awesome, you know, epic way on extra turns with that? Yes, I did. I'm gonna do it
Yeah.
again and again and again.
There's a school of thought that I subscribe to with like the quote unquote controversial cards.
Yeah.
Like you don't hate Infect, you just hate Triumph of the Hordes and Tainted Strike. You
Oh
don't
my god,
hate
yes.
Mass Land Destruction. You hate Armageddon, and yeah, Mass Land Destruction isn't a great example here. Or like
Yeah.
you don't like stacks pieces. You don't like stasis or back to basics and stuff like that. Like there is a healthy amount of all of the like faux pas or controversial cards that you can consider for your decks, and I do consider them for my decks
Mhm.
because if it helps me either like protect the thing that I'm trying to do or just fits naturally into the strategy, I'm going to sprinkle a little bit in there because it makes
Yeah.
the game interesting. It makes the game play out in a way that it otherwise wouldn't, and it fundamentally changes the way that all four players at the table are going to approach the game.
Yeah. Like, I will say if you do like a turn 2
I'm
Drannith
done. Yeah.
Magistrate,
See
I'm
ya.
I'm literally I feel hatred in my soul. I'm so sorry.
There, the,
Drannith Magistrate makes me so upset. Oh my
yeah.
god.
I try and build decks that I would enjoy playing against.
Yes, that
So,
is a good way to word that.
and another thing with that too is like just because you build a deck a certain way doesn't mean you have to play the deck a certain way either.
Yes. Oh my god, 1,000% yes. So I've had experiences where I played against people and they're like, "Oh, well, I have to do this because in my deck is like this is what it is. I have to do this." I'm like, "You don't have to do this. You're choosing to do this." There's a
Yeah.
very big difference between that. And at the end of the day, I want people in my pod to feel like they had a fun time and they didn't waste an hour and a half to 2 hours and they enjoyed the experience. And that's where like that social thing comes in. The social aspect is very important for me when I deck build. When it comes to Alibu and Infect, for example, I try to, you know, either win late game with that or pepper in Infect and provide answers. So,
Yeah.
like, if I deal Infect, it's like 2 or 3, blips at a time, or it's going to be later in the game where I'm dealing 15, but it's late game. It's not just like turn 2, you're murdered.
Yeah, no one likes being that person knocked out like 40 minutes into the game and having to
Mhm.
sit for another hour. You try not to be that person that is doing that to someone else. And
Yeah.
I very much I build with that very cognizantly. And even if I don't think that it's possible with my deck, if I find that it's possible in a game when I'm playtesting or I'm playing, I'm
Mhm.
not gonna do that. And I make a note like, oh wait, okay, this is actually possible. Let's either like if I'm just not comfortable with that being in the deck to begin with,
Mhm.
I'm gonna cut it, or I'm just gonna make sure that I don't do it when I'm playing the game. Sometimes, those little restrictions that you put on yourself to like, you could consider it like holding back, but also just playing to the vibe of the table. You can take those restrictions off if you're trying to like power up the deck
Mhm.
in a way,
Mhm.
but you don't want to get tempted like the devil in that respect. Like if that's just not something that you wanted in the first place, you just get rid of it altogether.
There have been 2 experiences where I've had decks that I feel like led to very feels bad moments that I've actually taken apart because of that. And, no one like, this isn't me saying like, "Oh, like, if you do this, then, whatever to your deck." That's not it at all. Because there have been times where I've built a deck and I actually didn't realize that there were synergies there until I played it. And that is something that I've experienced a lot. Like, I had, my MEL deck and I kept flickering Eternal Witness, and I kept getting Path to Exile back to my hand. And I remember I just kept playing it and playing it and playing it because, like, everyone was a threat, but I kept on, like, controlling the board in that way.
Hmm.
And in the moment, I was like, "This is a really cool thing to do," and then after the game, I'm like, "That really wasn't a good thing." Or, like, I had a Rograk and Kedis deck, and on turn 3, I think I played this game with Logan. On turn 3, I somehow, killed every single person at the table because I had, like, a weird thing with Fiery Emancipation out,
On
and,
turn 3.
it was crazy. It was really crazy. I just didn't think because it was just a weird thing, and I was like, "Okay, I'll do, like, maybe 10 damage," and it was, like, 30, and I was like, "Oh my god." So it's like it's definitely very weird when you deck build, but, like, it's a process I like to think is very cyclical. I think, like, I don't think you ever really finish a deck. I think you constantly tweak and tune your deck. And I know that there are such things as the concepts of, like, a finished deck unless a new piece is printed, but, like, I feel like I'm constantly fiddling with my lists,
That
even
just
the ones are solid.
that makes you happy. That sparks joy with you.
Yeah, it's nice. I like it. I like being able to, like, see this card and go, "I used to really like this card, I don't like it anymore." Look at this card and I go, "This card I feel like might make the game not fun for literally anybody else," or, like, stuff like that. So, that's kind of the trajectory I've noticed my deck building process.
There's an antithesis to the constant fiddling, where you let once you've built the deck and you've like got it dialed in, you enjoy it, you just leave it like that forever and ever, and it's like it's a memento.
Yeah.
It's a moment of time, and it's
Yeah.
just a way to look back at your time during that period of your Magic playing career.
Mhm.
Because like my Gira deck is like that for me. Like I don't really touch it.
Mhm.
Um, it does it does what I want it to do. It does big, dumb, hilarious stuff, and it populates some of my favorite creatures. Like I don't see a need to really mess with it.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm gonna mess with it, I'm just gonna build something new or something different and spend that time commitment because like you said, deck building is a time commitment. I'm gonna
Oh,
build
yeah.
a new deck. I'm gonna do something else.
So, speaking of something new, how do you start out deck building? Because I know that we've talked a little bit about it, and obviously it's like a very it obviously depends, but, like, how do you start building a deck? Like, what do you do when you're like, okay, I wanna build something new? What do you do?
So my head immediately goes to what's the biggest, dumbest, most ridiculous, clip-worthy thing that I can do with this deck,
That sounds
or
about right. Yeah.
do with this commander or this combo, and I work back. I work backwards from there.
Mm,
So like my Jetmir deck that I talked about last week, the whole idea was to get a land animation spell out with Legion's Loyalty to give the lands Myriad and attack
mm,
with them. So I deconstructed like, okay, I need two different enchantments. So I need a bunch of card draw or like an idyllic tutor to make sure that I can get the enchantments consistently. And then I
mhm,
also need to make sure that those lands don't die. So again, that's the whole, I figured out the thing that I want to do. Okay, how best do I support the thing and make
mhm,
sure that it either doesn't backfire and implode or just figuring out that consistency that so that thing happens more often than not. And I'm just not sitting there for an hour and a half wondering,
s
well, eventually it's going to show up or eventually something's going to happen. So you just don't feel bad.
mhm,
It's a bit like a big thing that I really take seriously is making sure that something happens or I'm doing something so I don't just sit there because I'm the type of player like if I'm just kind of coasting along in the game and not participating, I'm not really
mhm.
going to enjoy myself.
Yeah.
So I try my best to make sure that I can do something consistently. And that's usually those like, couple dozen cards beyond the thing to make sure that I can participate in the game meaningfully.
So you like to start with like set cards in mind, and then do you choose a commander after, or do you already have like a commander in
So
mind?
if I'm choosing the commander up front, that
Mhm.
commander's probably part of the thing.
Okay, okay, that makes sense.
So like Samut happened after the fact, and I realized, "Hey, I have a lot of like tap. I have a lot of tap abilities.
Mhm,
What's a commander that like likes doing untappy stuff? Oh, I happen to be in Naya as well, or I can like reasonably add a couple of red cards to this deck
mhm,
and use this commander. Or like
mhm,
Jetmir was the case of, well, if all of my lands are creatures, then all of his buffs and aura abilities get unlocked immediately, and that seems
mm.
great. Plus three,
Yeah.
plus O, trample, double strike, and vigilance seems great. Like, sign me up. But I beyond that, like Girid obviously wanting to populate things, like that's the thing. So
Mhm.
Girid came first, and then everything after that came after. So like we're gonna say a lot. It just depends. But usually, if I'm picking the like I said, if I'm picking the commander first, the commander's part of the thing. So
Yeah. For me, I also it feels like a cop out, but yeah, like it depends. It really does depend. Like there are times where oh gosh, where I have a concept in mind, I have a commander in mind, or like I've never done I've only done this actually twice. That's a lie. I've only ever done this twice. I typically like to start with a commander I enjoy, but there have been two times in my deck building experience where I've chosen a card in the 99 and built around that, or like a concept I wanted to do. So like the first time I ever did that, I it was Theros Beyond Death pre-release, and I traded somebody for a Nick's Bloom Ancient. And I was like, this is the coolest card I've ever seen in my entire life. I was like, how can I do something with this?
they're just certain cards that warrant completely being built around them, and like those are the cards that I think you and I both get the most joy out of because they're so restrictive.
Mhm. And I wanted to do something weird. And I remember at first choosing Chulane, but then I think I opted for, I think her name is Janara. I did a Bant build and I did like X spells. I wanted to like sink a bunch of mana and win with like Helix Pinnacle or whatever. So it's like, I want to do something with Helix Pinnacle. I wanted to alt win cons and stuff. It was very weird. And the second time I did that was with it was a mono white deck I actually built. I actually built it for one of my articles for Star City Games, where I had the Twitter community pick quote unquote like strong white cards. And then I took all the cards that everyone said and I put it into a list, and then I chose the commander last just because I wanted it was an experiment. But I typically like to find a commander that I enjoy or piques my interest, or weird to say, if I like the art of the commander, I will look past the ick I get from abilities and maybe try and fiddle with that. Like there's the mono green Glissa. I am obsessed with that art. I think it's stunning. I think it's beautiful. I don't want to build it because I don't like that ability, but I'm willing to work to build it because I really like how it looks. It's just so beautiful. And I'm like, I can work with this. Maybe I could put in like a liquid metal torque and a liquid metal coating. I can do something.
Hmm.
It's definitely really weird. Um, but typically I like to start with just like a creature I like, or something like that, and or even a concept. And I know that you and I have both fiddled with concepts before in deck
Yeah,
building and come out with something very weird,
like
like
very
themed.
Frankenstein's monster.
Yes, yes, yes. And like obviously sometimes those um go to very good places. We have two experiences where they've both gone to very good places. And then I have experiences where they never got off the ground, or I felt like the deck was too mean to ever see fruition in paper, you know?
No, I definitely had that with Saskia Storm.
Yeah.
Like the deck was too good at doing its thing that
Mhm.
it was to the point where it was just a complete time hog.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh my god, I just took it took me a second. It took me a second. Yeah, I remember with Thousand Year Storm, and you're
yeah,
like, this you're
No,
You
no, no,
were
that
fine.
was cast Thousand Year Storm. I
Okay, I
wanted
was
to
like
I wanted to use Thousand Year Storm to cast like 15 clone legions or like and like a Mizzix mastery
yeah.
a bunch of times or something like that. Like
And I remember you were like, "Okay, I took out Thousand Year Storm. Gone are the days of 15, 20-minute turns." And then that's a game that you said that exact same thing. You had like a 15 to 20-minute long turn. It was very funny.
it was very different. That second game was only a 15 to 20-minute turn. Oh no, no, that was like months later. I was playing Prosh Devour. That's what it was.
Okay.
And
Well,
I was doing Bolus Citadel stuff, and Bolus Citadel stuff just naturally lends itself to long turns because
oh yeah.
there's only one way to resolve spells with Bolus Citadel. You got to go one card at a time off the top. And
Mm,
when that card you're playing off the top says do the thing, shuffle your deck, like you got to shuffle like and spend the time in between each game action doing the thing.
oh my god.
I took that deck apart too, even though I had like 100 Michaeloth, and I had another game where I had like 68,000, 4,000 dragons. Like it did the thing. It was really good at what it did, but
That
it was cool to watch as a spectator,
mhm.
but not exactly cool as a participant of the game.
As a Get Drug player, I feel this.
There's
Someone who
only
has to
one way to
constantly
do Get Rod
shuffle.
combos.
Yeah. And honestly, I'm very thankful for the people who like let me fast track it out. Where they're like, "How do you win? Show us your loop." And I'm like, "Okay,
That's
here's how I
Primal
present
Surge
a
in a
loop."
nutshell. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, "This is how I do it. This is how I prevent myself from dying. If we want me to resolve each and every single rendition, I will. We will probably be here for like 2 hours."
Being able to say, this is what I'm working towards,
Yes.
and just going and getting the card, showing them it's there. It makes your like the mental math in your head and just the spoons it requires to pilot your deck a
Mhm.
lot better in practice. Because
Yeah.
when you're building a deck like on paper and just brewing it, it's like, yeah, okay, like yeah, this is gonna take some time to work towards, or like you might downplay the fact that like a combo requires like a lot of iterations and is time consuming. It's like,
Mhm.
like this is just how it is. And when you actually do it in person with other people, it doesn't fit the vibe. Like what do
Mhm.
you do there? Like do you take apart the deck, or do you try and rework the deck completely, just removing that combo? Because sometimes certain decks just that's the combo that they need. Like that's the
Mhm.
thing that actually makes it work. So the deck might not work and it's hard to salvage.
For for me, I don't know. I play things differently. So like there are decks where I feel like I don't know. Good examples like my Locust God deck. There was a game I played when I was in Richmond where I had the win on I want to say like turn 4. I had the win on like turn 4. Um but I purposely didn't play it because I was really having a good time with the people I was playing with. You know, they were just kind of getting their groove with their decks. I don't know, I had a lot of fun playing and it didn't really matter, you
You
know,
didn't
that I
want the game to
won.
end,
I
yeah.
didn't want it to end and like I still won the game, but I won it like turns later with a different combo slash cards interaction, what
Hmm.
have you. But I had fun because, you know, it was a good time. And like even with like Gitrog, you know, Gitrog is such a complex, complicated deck that I still find myself questioning like plays and stuff like that. But you know, sometimes it's just more fun to like play it or tweak it in a certain way. Like I you know, there's always going to be cards where they're objectively the more powerful piece. Like I had a Sylvan library in there and I hated playing it. So I took it out and I put in Urg, the new uncommon Dominaria frog,
Oh,
because I was like
there's a
I was
big
like,
difference between those
that's a
two.
big difference. And I was like, he's cute and doofy. He's a frog and he does land stuff. And I know I'm gonna enjoy playing it. So I did the switch. It just kind of depends. I don't like scrapping a deck unless I am bored with it or I just don't
Let
play
your
it anymore.
inner Marie Kondo flow through you.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's very weird. Like all of my decks that I've built function. They function well. They do the thing. They're able to play pretty fast. They're able to play pretty slow. You know, I can kind of tailor make the game the play style based on the game that we're playing.
Mhm.
But like ultimately there are just times where I'm like, "Ah, I don't like you anymore. You know, it's not you, it's me."
I don't wanna play with you anymore.
Yeah,
Insert
yeah,
Sid
yeah.
from Toy Story here.
Except it's me dropping the singles off at my LGS so I can fuel another deck later. Because that's, like, how I do it. When I get bored of a deck, I just take it, I rip it apart, I go to my card shop, and I go, "Store credit." And then I just
And then
wait.
immediately spend the store credit, like, 2 hours later. Like, you go in
Mm.
there with a plan
I view and maybe I
sometimes.
shouldn't do this, but I view my LGS as like a second bank. It's probably not the smartest way to do it.
I'm looking at the long box of staples on my floor right now and feeling really self-conscious. Like, I
Don't
could
feel self-conscious. Don't feel
s
self-conscious.
says the person with literal piles of cards on their desk right now.
Well, hold on. Over here, it's okay, well, it's hidden right now, but I have a stack of shocks and fetches and triumphs from my torn apart Goshen tie deck. And I just have them and
I
I'm like, God, I could
forgot that you
sell them.
had that deck. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. That was
Yeah, you've got to think of it.
short-lived. That was
It was
short-lived.
short-lived. And the reason why I took it apart is because it it
Shrines
just
take
felt
freaking forever.
not even that, it just felt very repetitive, and I don't like games where it works out the same way. I like different things, you know?
That reminds me of a really funny joke. My workout plan is hoping things work out, and that's kind of how I view deck building
Yeah.
and playing commander games. Like, I hope this works out. This seems fun.
Yeah, it's like, even, like, when we play games, it's like, should I do the optimally smart thing, or should I do the fun thing? Or is
Yeah.
it should I do the stupid thing, or should I do the good thing? You know, there's, like it's always fun to kind of, like, do that. Like, your deck building should impact your gameplay and the fact that you can kind of, do multiple different things at once. I like having multiple options and ways to win, and I know this kind of ties back into, like, what we talked about, like, last week. You know, I like finding multiple ways to do the thing. I
Yeah.
like having multiple win cons, like in Locust God, I have, like, Strixhaven Stadium, Laboratory Maniac, Jace, Sage of the Falls, Perforos, Impact Tremor. Like, I like having multiple ways to, like,
Yeah.
do stuff because it makes it less boring for me. You know, I have
It
way more
also
fun
just
doing that.
guarantees that every single game, you're gonna have multiple live draws that make you feel like you're part of the game and, like,
Yes.
in it to win it without even trying to be in it to win it at all times.
Yes.
It's a better feeling than just sitting there hoping you draw your one card for turn, but it's
Mhm.
like the one card. When you have like 8 of those one cards that can kind of flip a switch for you, it's a really exciting feeling to draw a card. It's a really exciting feeling to take a game action.
Yeah, I like giving myself options, and that's why I like to try not to deck build very narrowly, which is why going into another one of the theme decks that I built, why I will never build this in paper. I built it on Moxville just for funsies, but it's my Tuvasa the Sunlit deck, and it is every single enchantment in that deck is an aura that is either like a pacifism effect or like a claustrophobia type effect, or like it can't attack or block, or it can't untap, or
Mhm.
it just can't do anything. And then every single one, it's like in a prison in the moon type thing. Um, and I'm like, wow, this is so cool. And it can obviously work and do well because Tuvasa gets bigger. So I have a commander to win with commander damage and no one can block anything. I think I would be kicked out of every single LGS if that was the deck I brought because it's just so it's mean, but it's good, but it's mean. And I'm like, I can never build
There is always gonna be a group out there that is down to play against something like that.
this.
But that being said, having a deck that is more approachable for more tables is definitely something that, like, I try and do
Yes. Mhm,
cognizantly when I
mhm,
build a deck. Like, I've built some very disgustingly mean decks over the years.
mhm.
None of them are still together to this day. Like, I guess the closest thing is Primal Surge, because when you're resolving Primal Surge, you can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
But you're winning the game then and there. So, like, it's fine. And
Rest in
that's
peace, my
kind
whole
of
breacher
my
boy. I miss
yeah.
him every day.
I know. I know. You kind of stole the words out of my mouth. Like, I
I'm
was gonna
so
ask.
sorry.
No, no, you're good. I was gonna ask you, like, is there a deck that you've, like, desperately tried to make work over the years, but just haven't for whatever reason? And
Uh,
I feel like that Tsuvasa deck answers the question, but at the same time, I know you have, because you build a new deck every single week. Like, there's
yeah.
bound to be one that, like, legitimately just you don't vibe with as much as you want to try to make it work for you.
I think for me, it's it's color combos, and it's not me saying like, "Oh, I don't like this color combo." I just for some reason, no matter what, I cannot get a Mardu deck off the ground. I don't know what it is. I don't know why. Every single time I have tried to build a Mardu deck, which has been multiple times, both on stream and in paper, it just doesn't like me. I think the color combo has something against me.
Can I give you my bit of, hey, like, I like the Mardu colors.
I like them too.
It's because Mardu's a color combination that I've found, like, in my experience, to be very staple dependent and very staple centric.
I
And
suppose.
you're not a stapler.
I don't like it.
You don't like playing staples. So
Yeah.
the basis of, like, what makes Mardu work is just having high staple quality cards throughout the deck.
I think that might be the case for the first deck tried to build in Mardu, which was Queen Marchesa.
Oh,
It was
yeah,
very
I have never seen a Queen Marchesa deck that just hasn't been a staple pile of staple good stuff
but
ever.
then the second one I think is the exception, which was my Negan. I think it's Negan the Cold Blooded deck. I
Yeah,
built a Negan the Cold Blooded deck because I was like, this is sick. I love this. And I had a lot of fun
Negan
playing it.
Negan needs staples to work.
It wasn't that. I felt like such a villain playing that deck. Oh my god! Because the deck had. Let me tell you what I ran in that list. I want you to know what kind of monster I was. I did pox. I did
Was
small pox.
still are, yeah. You were trying to build one deck and ended up with a different deck. Like,
Yeah, I
you were trying to build Mardu control, and you ended up with, like, Mardu stacks.
Yeah, it was really hateful because I had like those pieces like you lose whatever third of your life stack a creature. I did
Hmm.
Killing Wave. I had Michiko Konda. I was like I'm going to make you give me treasures. It's
Yeah,
gonna happen. And I felt like such a jerk. But it was
there,
cool the first two, three, four times. And then after that, I'm like, I can't do this anymore.
as most of those decks usually are. Yeah,
Mm,
there's a big difference between saying, you could do this if you wanted to, I'm just gonna have an answer for it,
yeah.
versus you can't do something to begin with. Like, that's just
Yeah.
not gonna happen in the first place. Like, there's a big difference between those two. And you were trying to go for the former, and you ended up with the latter. You know,
Yeah.
when you play Pox, when you play Contagion and stuff like that, just like, you can tap your lands, but they're not gonna tap for your color.
Yeah, I will say though, I did feel incredibly powerful casting a pox. Oh my god, I felt so powerful.
It's a riveting experience
It's novelty.
once.
Yeah,
Just like,
yeah,
it's like, with great power comes great responsibility. Like,
yeah.
it's a very powerful feeling to cast an Armageddon, but it's the type of cards you have to know what you're doing with it.
Yeah,
You
ooh,
know?
I have a very good example of that. I was playing with Zbex, and she had this, Selesnya human stack, and she won I believe she won this game because we played 2 games, but she had, like, a bunch of humans out. She had, like, Cryptolith Right, and then she played, like, early, like, turn I wanna say 5, turn 4, turn 5, she played Armageddon, and everyone's lands got wiped out, but all her creatures could tap for
Yeah.
mana, and she was able to like, that's I think that's, like, the way, like, you should do it,
Mhm.
because I was in awe. I was like, that's really sick." I just thought it was so clever, like,
Yeah.
doing it in that way, 'cause even though it did remove resources from us, I was like, it was early enough in the game that I felt, we could rebuild at a reasonable pace, which we did. That
Mhm.
was really good and interesting, I think, to kind of see that interaction because I was like, "Oh, you can't play any more spells." And she's like, "No, I can." I was like, "Oh, whoa, that's so
I have a
sick." I just
Cryptolith,
thought it was
right?
so
We're
cool.
good.
It
Yeah.
was so cool, but I don't know,
That's, like,
deck building is interesting.
very legacy death and taxes to me. And I know Z-Bax is, like, first and foremost a legacy player
Mm,
to begin with. So that is very reminiscent of a deck that she enjoys playing elsewhere and has ported it over into Commander, or just
yeah.
like the concept of a deck, bringing it over.
And that's what I really like about Commander, again, to kind of tie things back into, like, just deck building in general. I love finding new ways to do things and seeing new ways to do things and, like, taking pictures of cards that I experience in a game that absolutely destroy me.
Hmm.
So, like, that Armageddon example is a really cool thing. Or, like, when I was at Richmond, somebody played, Second Sunrise, and I was like, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah, here, look." And I saw it, and I'm like, "That's such a cool card." And, like, I learned something new because there's so many cards that are legal in Commander. And I was like,
Yeah.
"This is great." And I love being able to, like, learn about new ways to do things in a creative way that's not just like your typical quote unquote staple pieces.
Now, one might say that you've taken this to the extreme with one of your decks.
Yeah.
And I think I know. I think you know what deck that I'm talking about.
I
That's your
do.
secret lair deck,
Yes,
where
yes.
like you have taken such a hyper specific restriction
Mhm.
and turned it into something that's like actually awesome and like really cool to watch.
Yeah,
Um,
I love
you
that
wanna
deck.
you wanna talk about like where that idea came from? Because I feel like that inception of an idea is something that people like might really grasp onto. Not necessarily to like build their own secret lair deck, but just like
Mhm.
a very unique, hyper specific deck to begin with.
Yeah, so I it started out with a tweet, as most of my stuff turns out. Um, and I posted a tweet, and I remember saying, like, do you think it's possible to make an all secret lair deck? And a lot of people were like, "Yeah, it's totally possible." And I even think the command zone responded, and they were like, "Yeah, we did it." And I'm like, "Okay, if they did it, I can do it." And I was like, "Okay, but how do I choose the commander?" And this was literally purely conceptual at the time. I wasn't gonna do anything with it because I'm like, "This is gonna be expensive. I'm not doing it." So I started like shopping through um all of the legal commanders that you could have from a secret lair. And I think at the time that I was looking, there was only like 120 some odd
Hmm.
viable legends that I could make in Commander and make a deck out of, but nothing was really capturing my eye. And so, I kind of set it aside for a while because I was like, I can't find anything because I didn't want to do, you know, dragons or anything like that. Like that just wasn't for me. Tribal can get very boring for me, so I was like, no. Or like slivers because slivers are a very viable option for a secret lair deck. But I was like, no.
They are
Um,
now, at least.
they are definitely.
They're
Um,
they're the- they're what the hidden cards that they're doing right now, like
yes.
the rare drop card. Like you either get the planeswalker and the stained glass, or
Mhm.
like the specific card for the drop, or a
The
land,
blueprint.
or yeah, or a
Blueprint, yeah, yeah.
sliver. Yeah,
Ooh, or like there's now 2 new ones. There's a persistent petitioners variation and a shadowbringing
right,
control
right.
variation, which I think is super
Yeah.
sick. Um, but I was like, "I'm just gonna put it aside and we'll figure something out later." And then, 3 days later, the left-handed, April Fool's secret lair was previewed, and in that secret lair was, Sisay, 5-color Sisay, and I was
Boom.
like,
There you go.
yes. Because I wanted a commander that did not have a narrow theme. Like if I wanted to for 5 colors, I could have done um oh, what's the name of that scarecrow? The 5-color scarecrow.
Reaper, like any of the legendaries from that particular secret layer
Yeah,
would
the
have worked.
Kaleidoscope Killer secret lair.
Yeah, but it's
Uh
Reaper King.
yeah, I was like Reaper King, and I'm like, I could do Reaper King. That's 5 colors, but that's narrow because it's scarecrows. And I
Hmm.
think he's the only scarecrow secret lair or something. Or like,
Well, so I'm on Scryfall right now, and I'm just
yeah.
like looking at Scarecrow,
Mhm.
and let me tell you, there are not enough Scarecrows to
Nope.
make a secret, or like to make a Scarecrow deck. There are 39, but pretty much all of them leave more to be desired.
Yeah. And I
Like,
or it
do you want to play Straw Soldiers, which is a 2 mana 1/3 Scarecrow with
no.
nothing else, no
Nope.
text box? Yeah.
No, and the time that I did in the past build with Reaper King, I put him in my Morathon deck, and it was my tribal
Hmm.
list. But,
Yeah.
um, I was like, "Oh my god, this is perfect." Because Sisay, even though at first glance you're like, "Oh, I have to do only legendaries," that's a very wide variety. That's a very wide margin for secret layers
Well, and
because
like you don't have to do legendaries either. Like it's just the things that she looks for. Like you can just
yeah.
have other good cards in there. Like
Mhm.
again, also went on Scryfall Advanced Search, the best friend for someone trying to do a very restrictive
I love
deck.
it. Love advanced search.
There are 813 unique secret lair cards. So like
Mhm.
why restrict yourself to like 100?
Yeah. And I think what I really enjoyed about, like, Sisay is her 5 colorness, the fact that she herself is a tutor in the command zone that is
Mhm.
repeatable. That
Yeah.
repeatableness is just superb. So I was like, "Okay, cool. I have my commander." And then I just started searching for legends, which by the way, I love Sisay because she says legendary in general. So you could get a land or a legendary enchantment or a legendary artifact or a planeswalker. Like you're not limited as much as you think you are. So I was like, this is great. And ultimately I just started grabbing cards that I already own because I like secret layers. I buy secret layers when I enjoy them, whether it's like a whole drop or like little tidbits or whatever. And I just like shoved everything in like a list on Moxfield. Fun fact, super cool fun fact. There are a lot of quote unquote commander staples in secret lair
It's almost
drops.
like the product has been tailor made for commander players.
Oh, I love it. There's soul ring. There's literally every signet. There's every talisman. There's chromatic lantern. There's arcane signet. There's even cultivate and a Kodama's reach and a beast within and a generous gift. Already packed in
Yeah,
there. Swords, path, everything. Like literally
Wrath of
everything.
God, Blasphemous Act, like
Sack, Vandal
all the state.
Blast,
Yeah.
everything. Literally everything. Ristic steady. Mystic
Now,
Remora.
here's my question:
Yeah.
if the heads or tails like coin flipper deck ever makes it to the public, like there's just like normal cards in there. Like, do those count
Mhm.
for the secret lair deck?
The way I did it for my secret lair deck is that at the bottom, the little I guess you could call it like the little code, the little set
Yeah,
code.
the set code.
Yeah. So if it says SLD on the bottom corner of a card, it
Okay.
counts. That's what
Okay.
matters to me. As long as it says SLD, it counts because even the mana base in my deck is a secret lair, which proved to be a little bit stressful at first, but it actually was kind of easier after a time because you have shocks and fetches. Boom, that's my mana
Yeah.
base right there. Even a command tower, mana confluence, and then even the basics in my deck are secret lairs. And at first I was like, this is going to cost me an arm and a leg for the mana base, but as you pointed out, which I'm so glad you did, in the very beginning of Secret Lairs, some of the bonus cards were just basic lands that
Yeah.
have that little SLD on the
They
bottom.
ended up switching to that eventually, and then they did
Yeah.
that for like 8 months. So there's like
Yes.
hundreds of thousands of secret lair basic lands just everywhere in the wild.
Yeah. And I love that because, like the full art textless ones are like the really pretty, like 8-bit
Mhm.
pixel ones or the
Yeah,
vaporwave ones are stunning, but they're like $5 to $7 per
at
at the
least.
cheapest.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was like, this is gonna be murder.
Like,
And
do you
so
really wanna spend $500 on basic
basic
lands?
no. So, like, that was the biggest stressor for me, but, like, I was really surprised because when I went in, I wanted to build a deck where I was like, I wanna put use to cards I have in a binder because I buy a lot of secret layers and I
Mhm.
had a lot of cards that were rotting in a binder because I would buy the secret layers for maybe, like, 3 or 4 cards, and I would put them in my decks, and then the rest would just kinda chill out, and I was like, "I wanna give value to these pieces I
Yeah.
own." And then, you know, as just so happens to say was like the perfect answer. And like I will say that this particular concept I brewed is very not not cost effective. It's very expensive. It's for it's definitely what I consider to be a whale deck. But that's just
Don't
because I've either purchased secret layers or I've been given secret layers in the past and I've had the ability to do it. But like it doesn't have
I'm
to be
not one
expensive.
to talk. I'm not one to talk, okay?
Yeah,
Because I feel
yours
like I feel
yours
like
is similar.
all of my decks boil down to being whale decks, but, like, the one deck that's been, like, my slow burn labor of love is, like, a real whale deck.
Oh, yeah,
So
even more so than mine. I would say 3 times as whaley as mine.
because I'm trying to do a deck that's all artist proofs.
Yeah.
So for those that might not be familiar with artist proofs, they're blank back cards sent to the artist who did the art for the card as part of their compensation for the art commission. And there's 50 non-foils and 30 foils of a card.
Yes.
And that's it. Every time it's reprinted, that artist gets
A new
50 or
one.
30 more,
Yeah.
but you're restricted as to like what you can even get your hands on, or like what's still in the wild, or like, certain artists only do lands, certain artists only do like legendary creatures. Like Yang Jae Choi does some of the most stunning legendary creatures, but they don't sell artist proofs. So if you're looking for, Gisa Glorious Rebirther or something like that for your deck, like, you can't get that. So you just have to not play that card. Uh, I know our friend Hobbs has a Grenzo Dungeon Warden all artist
Yeah.
proof deck, and
Yeah.
like Jeremy's working on an all artist proof deck, and like Jeremy's doing Maelstrom Wanderer, just like teamer good stuff. But like
Yeah.
Hobbs is specifically, granted, Hobbs has been working on his deck for like 6 or 7 years. I want to say, like, ever since he started collecting artist proofs, and it's like a very specific Goblin tribal deck.
Mhm.
And like I'm still trying to figure out what I want mine to be.
Yeah.
I have like a lot of legendary creatures, but it's just kind of boiling down to what can I even get my hands on in the first place.
I was gonna say, no, that limits you even more
Hmm.
because, like, it's not even a matter of, like, technically, every single card ever printed, you have the possibility of
Yeah,
getting.
yeah,
Possibility is that keyword I would like to
yeah.
emphasize here because it's the rarest of the rarest of the rare because
Hmm.
as you said before, and I really wanna emphasize, only 30 and 50. Like, that's a small number. Like, I have Chandra artist proofs, and on the little back of it, it just says 29 out of 30. Like, that's very
You
limited for
you got
however
you got the last two that you could get from Eric
Yeah.
DeChamps
Yeah.
without going into the secondary market. Granted, the second you get into the secondary market, things open up, but then
Yes.
you end up either like paying premiums because, like, Wayne Reynolds has recently passed away. Like, it's really hard to get a Wayne Reynolds proof to begin with, but like the fact
Mhm.
that Wayne has passed away, or Quentin Hoover has passed away as well, like, you can't get that stuff, and the stuff that is out in the wild is absolutely ridiculously expensive. Or
Mhm.
like certain artists who you might wait 2 years to get a sketch on the back of the artist proof.
Yeah, you're currently
So
going through that right now.
one of these days, I will have a 5-color Sese and a secret lair Saskia from Anna Steinbauer, and it's gonna be the coolest mail day ever.
It's gonna be so
But
sick.
I have been waiting 2 years, but I did specifically ask for sketches, and
Mhm.
Anna takes her time and does an amazing job with them.
Mhm.
And like Magali is the same way too.
Oh,
Darkin,
yes.
Darkin is another one that takes his time. His sketches are absolutely amazing and fantastic,
Mhm.
but you wait for them.
Yeah.
So, it's this balancing act, but at the same time, there are some cards out there that you wouldn't think are accessible that are like super super accessible. Like
Yeah.
I blew up your text messages the other day because I got a
Mhm.
hold of like one of my grails, quote unquote.
I was
Um,
actually about to bring that up, so I'm really glad you brought it up
yeah.
because you
Uh,
were like, "Oh my gosh."
like I can't believe I got this because it's the only one that I know of that exists in the whole world.
Yes.
Uh, so Matt Stewart is like one of my favorite artists, and I have a Najila from Matt, I have a Lavinia from Matt, but Matt, fun fact, did the Time Twister art for Magic Online and
Yeah.
Vintage Masters, and I got an artist proof on the back of a Lavinia that is Time Twister drawn with like a custom frame. And this gets into like a proxy and not proxy conversation. That's a completely different conversation for the other day. But
Mhm.
like for the spirit of this deck, where you're showing off the art of the artist on the back wherever possible, that's a Time
Mhm.
Twister that I just have for a deck now.
And it's stunning, by the way. It is so
It's
beautiful.
on it's on screen right now for those of you watching on
Look at
YouTube.
it.
And if you're not watching on YouTube, this is an episode to watch on YouTube.
Yeah, it
Um,
is.
this is like one of the coolest things I've ever seen.
Mhm,
But like these are the types of cards, like when we were saying earlier, like you see a cool card, you see a cool combo or something like that, and you
mhm.
say, like, I need to build a deck around that.
Yeah,
Does my deck need a time twister? No, but it's too cool not to. Like
yeah,
you if it, say I had the whole deck together, I would find room for it. And
yeah.
you're gonna be the exact same way over time with a secret lair deck. It's like they're
Mhm.
not gonna stop making secret lairs. Like they're gonna
No, they're not.
constantly make new stuff. There's no reason for them to slow down. So you're inevitably gonna have an evolution with your deck
Mhm.
over time. And it feeds that little like Timmy, good brain chemical sort of satisfaction in your head. It's like you're a tinkerer.
Yeah.
And
I
that secret lair deck just constantly releasing new product for
Oh, I love
is
it.
the way to satisfy that itch
Yeah.
with that deck for you.
It's a love letter to art, which I wanted it
Yeah.
to be because it's so unique, and yours is too, and I actually wanna bring this up. You actually inspired me, with that specifically, like, with, like, your time twister is very recent, but, like, your Najeela is the same way where, like, even though you have Najeela on the front, on the back, you kind of have, like, the mana value and, like,
Yeah.
this, like, little border,
That
and, like,
that's a
it
thing
kind of
that's a
is
thing
like
that Matt does
yeah, and
and
I
has
love
turned into his
that.
own thing.
I
Like
love that.
I've had other artists do something similar. Like I have a Horizon Canopy from Elena Danner, and it's really cool to see how they interpret like a card frame, or really
Yeah.
cool how they interpret like a deck for the text. But Matt takes it to a whole different level.
And you inspired me, and you were actually there with me when I got it, when we were in Richmond.
Yeah.
I,
Oh yeah.
yeah, yeah, after bullying you to get that burgeoning,
No, no, it
I
was an exploration because it was the last
exploration.
one.
It
I still
was, and it
have
was
it.
beautiful, and it was worth it, and I'm glad you bought it, by the way, but,
Yeah,
um
I am too, because right now that's the only piece of ramp in the secret lair deck, or not in the secret lair, in the artist proof deck.
see, it worked out, peer pressure
Yeah,
works.
yeah.
But
I
I,
don't like it, but I am gonna accept it.
I wanted really badly before I went to Richmond to get a necro impotence, to get Mark Tadine to sign it because I have an uncube and I wanted to put it in there. And I also have a necropotence in my Gitrog deck. But I could not find a necro impotence anywhere. Because I could order online. I prefer to go to my LGS, but like I couldn't find at the time I couldn't find one in stock. So I was standing in his line and I was like, I'll just get my card signed by him and I'll go. And as I'm scrolling through his little artist proof binder, he had one necro
It's
impotence proof
fate.
left. And I was so excited. I didn't even look at how much it was. I just went and I
I
snatched it.
need it.
And I it was so great because he the way that Mark does his work, and you actually told me about this, so I was prepared. Was that he doesn't take the card and go, "Thank you, I'll shoot you a message when you're done." He does it in front of you, and you're there while he does it.
That's why his line is like
Why
2
not?
hours long at
Yeah.
events, but he makes it a very personal and memorable experience for you.
Yes. And it was
Like that.
very lovely and super cool. And I asked him, I was like, "Can you draw the necropotence guy on the back of this necroimpotence card, but have him look like a clown?" And he was like, "Yeah." And so he drew the little necroimpotence dude as a clown. He has like a little clown nose and he has like a little red wig and whatever. Um, and I got like the cheapest version of it available. So when I went to grab my Gitrog deck, I took out the real legal signed necrobones and put in the uncard necroimpotence, but I put it in the back because I'm like, that's unique, that's cool, that's funny, and
Yeah.
that's stupid. And I love it. And no one's gonna argue with me on that because why? But like it was just such like a unique and fun
That's a
thing for
testament to
me.
our friend group. So like
Yeah.
obviously you like use, if you're doing something like that out at your shop or whatever, like use consent, bring it up in the
Yes.
pregame discussion, everything like that. But like we don't. I'm the type of person who's going to encourage Chase to do something like that.
It
Stephanie's
was
going to
so
be the type
good.
of person who's going to
Mhm,
like toot your horn and like get mad if you don't.
mhm.
Everyone's got, it's going to go this or that. Like sometimes you can't get away with playing decks like that, but it's,
Yeah.
you have a story to tell that whole experience. And that's
Mhm,
essentially what your deck, what my artist proof deck is trying to be. It's, you know, all of my travels as a Magic player, all of,
mhm,
the different people that I've met over the years that I've like genuinely gotten to know, who I've bought artist proofs from, because
mhm.
in a small niche community like Magic, it's a lot smaller than you really think it is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
for whatever reason, it becomes a very personal process, whether that's the deck building or the actual like acquisition of the cards. Like
Mhm.
there's always something to chum over with your buddies or just have small talk at a table. Like, whenever Chase drops that necro impotence down on the table, like
Mhm.
you always got to tell the story. Like there's always going to be someone
Yeah.
new there to hear about it, or it's like someone's always going to ask like, hey, why do you have a secret lair deck? Like, what was the idea
Mhm.
behind that? Like, it it gets very intimate in the
Yeah.
best of ways, and it's like that's the best part about Commander. Like, that's the original one of the original points of Commander was to be
Mhm.
very personable and of just a different way to experience Magic.
Yeah. And and I think that's what we mean when we say Commander as a creative format. It's not, if you net deck, it's bad, or if you like take a
There's
content
still a
creators.
creative aspect to net decking though, because you're not just
Yeah.
gonna go and net deck any other deck.
No.
You're gonna net deck something that you really vibe with, or like you have a very personal connection to, whether it's
Yeah.
like rebuilding your best friend from childhood's deck or a
Mhm.
favorite creator of yours. Like it's still personable.
Yeah, I mean, I recently built, it's very illegal, by the way, the deck, not the action of building, but the deck itself was illegal. A Pietra Crafter of Clowns deck. Because my friend used to be a circus clown for Ringling Brothers, and he and I talk every now and then, and he tells me whenever he sees something magic related, he'll text me about it. And when I told him that there were clowns in magic, he actually got really excited, and I was like, I'll just build him like a little clown deck. And that was like a fun little creative process. That was a way for me to kind of share my interest with a friend.
Yeah.
Um, and that was kind of like a way for me to do that. So like deck building is multiple things. Like I don't know. I love the concept of deck building because it is it each time you do it, even if you build like the same deck, like if you take one list and you build it 10 years later, it's still going to be a different
Oh,
experience.
it's going to be a different
And I
experience.
love
It's
that.
probably going to be a completely different list too,
Yeah.
unless you're cognizantly saying like I'm going to build this deck like I would have built it 10 years ago. But even then, like that's
Mhm.
a very personal experience and a
Yeah.
very fun idea to explore.
Mhm. I don't know. I just love stuff like that. I think whether you're going for like something that you see on EDA track or something that you see on Moxfield, or you take a creators list, which by the way, creators love that. It's very
Super
sweet
flattering.
to.
No one's
It
ever
is.
copied any of my decks yet, but I build very unique personal decks. So I understand why it's not going to happen. Like you build like Chandra
Yeah.
and like have become the face of Chandra decks, which is the coolest thing.
Yeah. I love it. I love being the Chandra person. Or my Alibu deck. I had somebody tell me that they built my Alibu deck after my extra turns appearance,
They
which
didn't
made me
know it was
so
you
happy.
either, if I remember correctly, which is
Yeah, it
even
was really
funnier to
weird.
me.
I wasn't wearing makeup. I had my hair in a bun and I was wearing sweats and I had my glasses on. And this guy in my LGS, he was playing Alibu and I'm like, "Oh, sick. I have an Alibu deck." And I was like, "I love that." And he goes, "Yeah, also I built it after I saw it on Extra Turns." And I was like, "That was me." And he goes, "Oh my god. It was you."
Did you sign the Alibu after the fact?
No.
Like
No, I did not. No.
just went on two passing ships in the night, had a moment.
I see him at my LGS frequently, and every time I look at him and I'm like, "Man, you're the Alibi dude." It
You're
makes
the
me
Alibu guy.
happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it just makes me happy, stuff like that, because it's I don't consider Alibu to be like a well-loved, popular
It's Boros,
commander.
that's why.
Yeah, it's good.
Sorry.
I don't care what anyone
Yeah.
says, but,
Seriously.
um, you know, the creative process is different, and I don't know, like, I love deck building and for in a multitude of ways, whether it's a creative process for me, I like to call it the muscle. It takes practice. Deck building, it takes time. You're not gonna be super awesome at it, immediately. It takes time to build that muscle and to get. I mean, even now, after however many years of playing Magic, I still have, moments where I misread a combo that I thought, or like I before the rules change with Kakusho, where commanders hit the yard and then go back to the command zone. Before that, I
Rather
built a
than going
Kakusho
straight
deck.
there, right?
Yeah, I built a Kakusho deck. I invested money into that mono black deck. And then when I finally played it, it hit the yard. I went, okay, time to put it back in the command zone. And they went, no, 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 no. It stays there. And I was like, what? And I was so upset, and I wasted money, and I took the deck apart, and it was a loss of investment. So, like, it takes time
Yeah.
and a lot of complex rules. You have to have a very good grasp of rules, and it took me forever to understand my own Gitrog deck. It's this is a long way of me saying, like, deck building, it's you're gonna
The first step to being good at deck building is sucking at deck building.
Yes, thank you.
I got you. I knew
Thank
where you were
you.
going with
I
that.
was trying, words were forming, mouth was not connecting. It was just blah, 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 blah. Thank you so much for watching this week's episode of Bad at Magic. If you don't know who I am, my name is Chase, also known as Mana Curves, and I'm a Commander content creator. I stream Paper Commander on my Twitch channel, Mana Curves, Thursdays and Sundays at 6 p.m. Eastern, and I do collaborative deck building where I build an entire Commander deck with chat Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern, and I also write articles about Commander for Star City Games, and those come out every single Friday.
And I'm at EK Plays Cards on all the things. I work behind the scenes with all of your favorite Commander content creators and Commander luminaries like Shivam Bot and Casual Magic with Shivam Bot podcast, Elder Dragon Hijinks with Ailey and Olivia, and then obviously I'm over here. And then I also live rent-free in Stephen Green's head and the Commander Versus crew. Some of my great friends. I know you live rent-free in Steven's head too, so it's getting a little crowded. It's getting a little crowded over here. Yeah.
I was there first.
So if you're supporting them, you're supporting me too. You can find this podcast on all of your favorite podcast platforms of choice: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, Stitcher, everything like that. You can also find it, if you're not already here, on youtube.com. So make sure to hit the like button, the subscribe button. You've made it this far in the episode. Yeah, do the thing. You've made it this far in the episode already, so it's not a tall ask for us to ask you to do that very kindly, and we really, really appreciate that. It helps us defeat the evil algorithm overlords. And thanks for listening.